What knee-jerk rule did your high school enforce after Columbine? They banned trench coats and stopped letting the seniors go off campus for lunch. A few years after I asked a teacher if they could arrange to have an adult in the hallway where my locker was because someone kept harassing me. I was threatened with a suspension for fighting if anything were to happen. I expressed confusion at being threatened for trying to avoid a fight. I was then asked if I was going to pull a Columbine. No trench coats, and they started locking the front door during school, but didn't lock any other doors. It was dumb. No more hunting guns in your truck at school. I went to Green Mountain High School in Lakewood, Colorado. We considered ourselves to be Columbine's sister school. The administration did everything that has been mentioned here so far, banning trench coats, backpacks, etc. But they also started doing weekly locker searches, and began placing police at every entrance with metal detectors. My wife did go to Columbine, and she was there for the shooting. It was so much worse there. Not only did the kids all have trauma from the incident, but when they all started coming back, all these draconian rules started getting implemented. I remember we got a lot of bomb threats called in after Columbine and they would escort us to the football field. There were hundreds of kids all sitting on the bleachers for like the 5th time, and a kid said what if they put the bomb under the bleachers before they call in the threat, then we would be sitting ducks. We got bused to the old racetrack for the next bomb threat, lol. I was a senior. I remember a bike cop zipping up and down the hallways riding inside. And I remember canine officers on campus sniffing lockers. That went on for about 2 weeks, and then as graduation was literally around the corner, it all seemed to go back to normal. No rule changes that I knew of. We couldn't bring guns to school anymore. I know it sounds crazy, but I went to a private school in South Louisiana. So people always had rifles and shotguns in their trucks on window racks. I was in 8th grade, 50 miles away from Littleton. They expelled me for being a goth kid. They straight up told me that they knew I was harmless and it was all optics. I'm still angry about it. My kids have a wildly different experience in school than I did when it comes to rules to prevent shootings. Thing is, none of it seems to be preventing shootings. My school tried forcing students to wear clear backpacks. They didn't get far though because they wanted parents to buy them and they got a lot of pushback. I remember just a handful of kids wearing them. However, they did enforce a uniform policy that did stick. Been that way ever since. Banned trench coats. I'm sure there were more, but I can't remember them. Edit. I also remember anyone who was considered even slightly odd or a loner or whatever was definitely going to do a Columbine. The changes were so quick. I remember Columbine happening earlier in the week, and by Friday, things were in effect. Like many others here, trench coats were banned. Our school used to be pretty open and it was immediately locked up, and parents all of a sudden had to buzz the front door to be let in. Another thing they started was zero tolerance. School fights became an immediate police presence and kids getting hauled away in cuffs. Lockdown drills, no backpacks in the classroom. Had bomb squads called on a banned kid's locker with a metronome in it. At the time, I was known to wear a trench coat and they came to me and told me I couldn't do that anymore. I didn't comply. They threatened me with suspension. I didn't comply. They didn't suspend me. I always read about extreme measures other schools took, mine just banned trench coats. I don't remember anyone in my school wearing one in the first place, so it didn't seem to affect anything. The immediate ban on trench coats. It didn't matter if it was a fashion choice or just a heavy coat for winter, if it went past your waist, it was gone. Our school had an assembly on bullying and I remember thinking, good, this is the way this should go, people should be nicer to each other. Well, it ended up being more like, ostracize the weird kids even more because they're probably planning to kill you. Trench coats were banned. In southeast Queensland. I don't know that anyone wore one before that, even in winter. And we had uniforms anyway. They literally chained the outside doors closed with a padlock. There wasn't a good locking mechanism for them during the school day. The doors were either locked or open for all. Fire chief was there the next day. A week later we had new doors. I was a senior, and I was the trench coat metal canes guy at my high school. I actually had an old green one from World War II, so not even the black duster type. I wore it before, and I continued to wear it after. I got shit for it, but I argued that I wore it long before they did what they did, and liking a coat doesn't make me a murderer. Don't give me shit because some asshole across the country did something stupid and just happens to wear similar clothing. They ultimately let me keep the coat, and thankfully I graduated less than a month later. Not after Columbine, but after our own, much smaller, shooting the year before, they briefly did metal detectors. That whole spring was a mess because someone kept calling in false bomb threats after the shooting, so we spent a lot of time outside in the parking lot waiting for the buildings to be searched. I'm not sure if those would be taken as seriously now, but back then we were one of the first shootings to make national news, and everything felt very fragile. I really any knee-jerk reaction other that everyone was on high alert when a hit list popped up with a bunch of the popular kids on it. Now that I think about it, they told the kids that were on the hit list, so of course within 2 days every kid knew who was on the list. This was a terrible time to be a metalhead. Everyone thought we were one of them, and all of a sudden our math notebooks covered in skulls and decapitated teacher drawings were Exhibit A. The whole school was this crazy one-floor labyrinth, and they used to let us walk outside, so it was easier to go from a class at the end of one hallway to a class at the end of another hallway without having to deal with the mosh pits at the intersection. But they locked all that down after Columbine too. End of an era. Adding another memory, there were constantly days where they were going to come and shoot up the school, and everyone was so afraid they'd call in sick. Kinda like after 9/11, how every town was next on the list to be blown up because of some military base close by.